Why did Snake lose to Volgin? Perhaps the right question to ask would be, why did Snake get beaten so easily in their first encounter? Especially when he put up an incredible fight later on. You may think this is a stupid question, and it probably is. However, it has plagued my mind for a while, and now with Delta releasing and tying a few little bits nicely together, I think I have a decent enough explanation, so bear with me. Now, this isn't going to be some brainless big boss glaze. I think there's a convoluted indoor explanation there, and I'm willing to get to the bottom of it. Before we start, I'll preface by saying the whole XOF made sure he completed his mission bullshit is so asinine and poorly written that I do not consider it canon. I don't. It completely undermines MGS3 as a game, as well as the impact of Snake Eater as a mission. But if you have to look at this as if it is canon, I think in most cases where XOF was involved, it would be them clearing up Grozny Grad. After the final battle, of course, and so forth, you know, after the tank is destroyed, blah, 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 blah. I cannot see them physically getting involved in the moments where the boss, Oslo, and Volgin are all present, as with, you know, as with this particular scene and cutscene. Now, feel free to correct me on that if that is not the case. With that out of the way, let's analyze what happens and what eventually leads up to Snake's infamous beatdown. Now, it's impossible to ascertain Snake's stamina level during the scene. We have to take into account that he had a short rest with Eva, defeated the Fury, and infiltrated the impenetrable fortress of Grozny Grad, which I would say makes him relatively well off in terms of stamina, especially if you consider this dude can tank a nuclear explosion at face value. So I'd say he was about 60 to 70% stamina relatively. You know, he's a pretty durable guy. If we fast forward, he disarms Volgin, and then the boss swoops in. She quite literally throws him around like a pancake with relative ease, and this happens in every single encounter they have, right up until the end. So why Snake gassed out after every single encounter with her? In their forest encounter, you can see that Snake is holding back. He's still in denial and emotional distress due to her defection. The boss primarily uses CQC throws and strikes. If we take and look at this, relative to gameplay terms, CQC strikes and punches used by Snake against any enemy in the game result in a knockout, and if used in a boss fight, results in direct stamina damage to the enemy. Now this applies to every single boss and enemy in the game, from Snake's perspective. Now, this sort of correlates with how the boss uses CQC against Snake. In every cutscene, he's basically gassed out and out of breath after a sequence of frozen strikes from her. He's never seriously injured or maimed outside of the arm break on the bridge, which mechanically serves as an introduction to the cure menu, if you think about it that way. For story reasons, the boss needs Snake to survive and succeed, and B, CQC primarily does stamina damage. It can be used to kill, but does not get utilized in such a way until the final fight between the boss and Snake, whereby her throws do actual lethal damage to you. Why? Because the boss is no longer ensuring Snake survives until the very end. He made it this far and she can let loose and use lethal force. At least that is what it seems like to me, and it's all somewhat deliberately hinted at throughout the game, especially during the start when she steps between Volgin and an injured Snake and doesn't use lethal force to kill him, instead throwing him off the bridge to making it look like he died as opposed to him being electrocuted and beaten. Then again, she asks about his arm during the nighttime encounter. The way she asks about this is genuine, you know, she's not faking that, she's genuinely concerned, but she knows what her mission is and so forth. So once again, towards the end, when she's asked to cut out Snake's eye, she actually aims for his left eye as opposed to his right, so since we can safely assume right is his more dominant eye, but you know, I digress. And obviously, you know, that's important for a soldier as implied in many cutscenes. But let's not get into that. I think that kind of helps put into perspective and contextualize things a little bit. Again, someone here might have a better explanation than me, and that is okay, but this is simply the conclusion I came to. We can safely assume the boss's CQCs, throws, and punches are a bit more effective and damaging to stamina than Snake's. I mean, seeing as Snake is usually gassed after 2 throws, he's completely out of breath and, you know, on the ground, I'd probably assume for it to put this into gameplay terms relatively, it will be about 2 to 3 times the stamina damage of Snake's CQC throws. So by the time Snake is unmasked, his stamina is drained and he's exhausted. The situation doesn't look good for him at all. He has to keep his lips sealed because his directive is still to extract Sokolov and in a way protect Eva's cover and then, you know, destroy the Shagohod, whatever. Now that I explained how the boss in CQC plays into this, onto the actual beatdown here. You can actually see Snake try and defend himself from the first 2 strikes here. It is a little harder to see in the remake due to some clarity issues, but he actually raises his arm in a defensive way, but he does so after already having suffered immensely powerful blows, one to his body and another to his skull, enough to draw blood as seen here. Now, we're not talking about some panty-waist punches. These are punches thrown by a 6'6" wall of muscle that at the time was renowned as a boxing champion. You don't believe me? You can check the wiki and various materials on this game. It's true. So even at full stamina, this wouldn't be something you could easily defend from. Nonetheless, you can see Snake's guard break immediately, either due to stamina lost, concussive injury, or from the previous punches. He's overwhelmed with ease. Now onto the most important fact that most people seem to overlook when looking at this scene. I see so many comments and people saying, "Oh shit, why didn't Snake defend himself, man? Why is he getting beat down so easily? Why the fuck isn't Snake defending so well?" He literally can't. Each one of these punches is like not only just carrying a ton of force behind it, but a hefty bit of electric discharge. So it's effectively like Volgin's beating him with electric brass knuckles or something. And I'm not talking out of my arse here, because an amazing detail added during Delta is that you can actually see Snake's stolen officer uniform burning up as he's getting hit. And you guessed it, from all the electricity, what happens when you get electrocuted? You burn up, right? And you can see this stuff coming up on his uniform, especially during the part of the scene. So it's not that Snake is not defending himself, it's more that he can't given his circumstances. It's like Gandhi said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So Snake was quite literally shocked, no pun intended. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I feel we need justice for Snake, because this was an extremely unfair and a disadvantageous situation for him. He was roughed up by CQC and effectively already gassed out, straight into getting beat by the equivalent of a walking stun rod fist. So, you know, if you put the fight into a far more even setting, as you see during the boss fight, you can clearly see Snake as a fucking monster when it comes to fighting in CQC. The new CQC animations and counters they've added to Delta, they really help convey this. Even if they're reused from MGS5, you can actually see Snake defending himself from Volgin's attacks and, you know, overpowering him with CQC and technique, and that's really amazing to see. And this all happens when, you know, he's more or less at full stamina in a 1v1 duel. You know, so if anything, Delta helps convey the fact that Snake is very skilled in the use of CQC and more than capable of defending himself when the situation and circumstances present a far fairer environment. So, with that said, I hope my points were presented fairly and I can help you all understand why I think Snake was easily overpowered in their first encounter and why, given fairer circumstances of an actual 1v1, he actually ultimately beat an overpowered Volgin. You know, it's a mixture of strength and technique. And, you know, speed. In his case, he's pretty fast to be able to block these punches, deflect them and do whatever. So, you know, this wouldn't really be so possible or easy to analyze if it wasn't for the great details introduced by Delta. You know, the clothes burning up, and even later on when you defeat Volgin. I digress, but you still, Delta introduced some amazing details that, you know, without it just wouldn't be the same. So props to the guys in the team developing Delta. So yeah, if you stayed till the end, thank you very much for watching the video, and I hope you've enjoyed this. And I'd love to hear your theories or explanations to this as well, if possible. So yeah, let's get a discussion going in the comments.